Hey guys, in this episode, we're gonna talk about the methods in Golang and we're gonna actually discuss about the function types mainly and when is the good time to talk about use it and actually prefer to comparing to other like struct or any other type. For that, actually, let's start with the first one. So assigning methods to any type is possible in Go. So let's go with this one. So let's say there's a type like my integer, and in Golang it's possible to use this my integer as a method, and just like in Java, for example. So is even, for example, if the mod 2 is to my int is 0, then it is a even. So it's a simple function, and let's see the usage for that. Let's try with the even number, and if you see this, now we get this working. So we can add these features to our primitive types. That's easy, straightforward, and is useful. Let's actually merge these two together and explain it better, understand it better. So let's imagine there is, as you know, there's an interface. It is handler interface, and it is basically serving HTTP, right? And getting the response writer and request, right? So anything implement this function is actually we can use as a handler in our system. So here we can say the like HTTP we could do this, right? My handler, and we can define it as a struct, and then we do like handler, my handler, and if we did this with the my handler, that would work, right? That's the usual that's the normal case in Go, and that is possible already. But how about if you want to use it with the function? So let's actually HandlerFunc. Let's use this one, and it is gonna be the same with this signature. But there has to be the func. And if we define handler function and serve HTTP, and let's use this again. And if we do handler function, give the parameters, that also works, right? So if we have do handler func and use these parameters and yeah, do the same, like this will also work, right? So it's we just replace the instance with the function type, and that also works. And so what is the advantage of using this comparing to structs, right? So I would say if your function is going to do basically just this, there's no other thing, there's no other state or something, and it's super simple, straightforward thing, then use the function. But if you have the other states, you need to have other dependencies, then the struct is the way to go. And That's the basically main difference. So if we give the one last example here, the logger example, so let's remove everything. So let's say there's a logger type, logger interface, and it's logging the messages, right? So let's say there's a function implementing the logger. First, we need to define the function type, logger func, let's say. And the function is going to get the message, it's going to be string. And we have to define the method which has to implement the logger interface. So the implementation is by a function or a struct, it doesn't matter. It works both beautifully fine. We just need to pass this message to the function, and that's it. Let's define a logger processor here, which is gonna get the slice of strings, and let's call them logs, and the logger function, which is gonna be logger function. We can even define here the interface, right? So logger. Since our function method is implementing the interface, it wouldn't be any problem. And let's say we're gonna get each messages, logs, and we're gonna some logs here. Slice of some logs, log 1, log 2. And let's call the logger processor and define the logs. And here we can actually use the function which is going to be called in the processor itself. So it's gonna be actually print, let's say, use the strings to upper and the message. And this has to be logger func. Let's see if it's gonna work. As you see, we could convert to log 1 and log 2 to the uppercase, and that was possible. And here we use the interface, right? So as I said, when there's a possibility to have, like, let's say we were using a struct, okay, log struct, and we needed a dependency, okay, we need the logger dependency. So it's getting more complicated, and we had to implement the log method as well. So then would have been make sense here to use this as an interface, but here we can easily define logger func, and that should be fine as well. So the rule of thumb is use the func method here when things are simple, no state, no dependency, but use the interface when you have some complexity. And either way, it's going to work, but that's gonna change your preference. Should you use the method function or should you use the struct instead? All right, that's it for today. I will see you in the next one.